we are going to move on to the strat plan.
Okay, team, if I could grab the strat plan presentation on the screen. Thanks. So since mid-year, we've been engaging our community around a new strategic plan. And so tonight we are bringing forth our initial draft. That's a culmination of the work of a variety of engagements with our community. I'll kind of set the context for it. We also have some members from our core planning team who will speak about their experiences tonight as well, and let you know kind of what we heard from our community on an at-large survey with some themes that emerged, and then some next steps. Just to give you a little bit of a background, and some of the information you have seen throughout the course of this year, but obviously this is a plan that's designed to guarantee a vision for success, and it's multi-year. This is a big conversation in our core planning team is, do we do this every year? And the answer was no, you don't do this kind of a lift every year. But it is something that should have some staying power. And I think that was kind of the challenge too, of how do you have something that's broad enough for some staying power, but meaningful enough that you can feel it today. So that's something that we really grappled with. Strat plan aligns our community's values and commitments to measurable outcomes, allows our administrative team to develop strong, robust department and school improvement plans that are aligned to what the community would want to see in their school experiences. And then lastly, it communicates the priorities. As the saying goes, if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. And so it really helps us bring a focus. And one of the things that I really like to make sure that we stress is that not only does it give us the priorities of what to do, it gives us permission to say no and to stop doing things as well, because we could ask ourselves, how does this align to this priority? And if not, then why are we doing this? So another really important aspect of strategic planning. Next slide. So strat, we can just fill it all. Strat plans, they're something that's designed by a group of folks throughout our entire community. They are long-term kind of strategic district level goals, and it does serve as an overall guiding framework. And I think the biggest challenge for those who really participated, as well as just anybody looking at a strat plan, it's not inclusive of every little thing that we do in our district. This is the tip of the iceberg, and there's a big portion of it that's beneath the waterline, and that's where the real work gets done. Strat plans aren't just one idea or this is my pet passion and I want to make sure I get this into the plan because this is what we're going to do. It's not that narrow. So it's a balance of being broad and narrow. And it doesn't detail every little thing that we do. And I think this is probably one of the biggest questions of our core team was these are very lofty. And where's the how? And the how goes into the management aspect of things versus the governance strategy setting aspect of things. And we'll talk a little bit about that distinction. And they are not a rigid set of requirements. Strat plans are somewhat organic. We do put stakes in the grounds around our priorities, but like I shared earlier, they have to have staying power. This is not something we're doing every single year, so we want to make sure that we've got some staying power in the strategic plan. A little background about our timeline here. Our current strategic plan was developed around 2014. In 2018, we did a little refresh on the strat plan, and then this year we've done a comprehensive engagement to completely make a new strategic plan. You'll see carryovers from our current plan. You'll probably see carryovers from other plans that you've seen from other districts that you're familiar with. And, you know, a strat plan is fairly common of what you would see across, particularly within the education industry. We all focus on a lot of the same things. How we do it is where we start to differentiate from one another as respective districts. So our process was one, as I stated, that began this past January. And it took us through just a couple of weeks ago in the end of May. And we did have to make some adjustments along the way. This was something that we wanted to take our time in, but obviously we knew that we wanted to get this done in a reasonable time frame. On average, you'll find many organizations in education taking about 4 or 5 months to do a strategic plan, generally speaking. But when you're in a deep conversation with community, it's hard to sometimes stop the conversation. You want to kind of let things play out, and that happened from time to time, both in our community engagement sessions as well as sometimes with our core planning team sessions, and quite frankly, even the administrative team that was facilitating some of these processes and kind of debriefing and, you know, culminating some of this work. So, but there's been a series of meetings throughout our district and throughout our community with a variety of perspectives. And just to give you a sense of kind of how this work is guided, we started very big and broad with 4 large questions that developed a significant data set, a qualitative data set. And if any of you have gone through qualitative research, it's very messy. You're making meaning and doing a lot of co-interpreting with what individuals said. Because qualitative research, context matters. And so if you weren't at the table when that phrase or statement was said, and it's just sitting on a piece of paper, you're like, what does that mean, right? And so as researchers, we oftentimes have to contextualize what is said. And so we've started with those 4 broad ones at that initial data gathering phase. We then brought that to our core team for some co-interpretation, initial co-interpretation. We then went back out to our community with a synthesized version of what we gathered from that initial data set and said, did we hear this correctly? Are we reflecting this back to you correctly? Is there something missing? So that was our second time out. Community provided a lot of feedback, and I will just say our participation grew significantly from our first engagement session to, I think, our max, which was close to 65 or so people at a community gathering. And so that was great to watch, and that our community responded to the request to say, hey, next time, grab a neighbor, grab a friend, and please promote this, because we wanted to get this out there as much as we possibly can. So after that second time of our broader community, we brought it back to our core planning team to start doing some initial framing, okay? And then from that initial framing, we brought it forth to an initial draft, which you all saw several weeks ago. That this is where I think we got hung up a little bit in the weeds as a core team. The draft wasn't as complete as we intended it to be for you all. And you all provided some context and feedback, but generally speaking, as the board, you said, you know what, we want to continue to empower the core team to do the work. We don't want to take that from the team. And I made an offer to modify and adjust our timeline of how we would do that and bring it back to the core team to finish that work and then ultimately bring it back and adjusted that date. So appreciate you empowering the team continually and our community and being a little flexible with that timeline. And then that brings us here tonight to present a strategic plan to you in its initial draft form. We had a phenomenal core team that was part of the process. We had about 52 people or so that were part of that core team. And it was inclusive of our parents, our students, our staff, city leadership, school board representatives as well, and myself. And I'll tell you, it was a dynamic team. And one of the first things I think I shared with the board, and I believe I shared with the strategic planning core team, is that the product that we create is not going to be fundamentally different than many other school strategic plans that you see. They're going to focus on academics. They're going to focus on stewardship of resources. They're going to focus on community engagement. Like, these are the big pillars that make up public education. To not have them in there, many of us would be shocked. But the process is where the magic happens. And one of the things that we were very proud about is that while we engaged our community, we built community. There were folks from various walks of life, folks who had never met one another, folks who discovered that they actually live in the same neighborhood but never saw each other, you know, on the block, right? And said, oh, I lived in that neighborhood too. And so, I mean, we heard these things. So it was great to watch our community come together, and coming together for a very high purpose of putting together some priorities, strategies, mission, vision that will help guide the work of this district for years to come. And so I want to thank our core planning team who spent a lot of hours together and a lot of time together to go through data. And I'll tell you, we've had experts, statisticians on the core team who actually did this for a living. And then we had students who have never engaged in such an engagement. And we have folks who are brand new, never participated in our district. And we have had some who have been on a historical team of some sort in our district. So a lot of varied perspectives. And it was a beautiful thing to watch. And I can tell you, our first time together as a core planning team, our teachers can empathize with this. As an educator, you develop the best lesson plan and design, and you spend hours on this, and you come before the class and you present this, and then something happens that you didn't plan for, right? And that happened our very first night. As we were closing out, one of our participants said, you know, you're asking us, I'm paraphrasing, you're asking us to do a big lift, and I would like to kind of know who I'm with. And I would love to have some community building because I feel like a complete stranger here. And so can we make sure that we're doing some community building throughout this process? And that was the request of one, which I would imagine was probably the whole team. And so every time we had a community builder at the beginning of every one of our sessions, and you could just see with every session of the core planning team, trust, relationships, open conversation just continue to grow and grow and grow over the course of the time that we were together. So again, a big shout out to our community and also our core team. And tonight we actually have a few members from our core team that I would like to invite to come forward. We have Anna, Lee, and Bill, who are 3 members of our core team. And then Dan Borgen, our board rep, he was also part of our core team as well. And so I would just like to invite them to come up and say a few words about your experience and just thinking about the months that we spent together. And some of you participated in some of the listening sessions, and some of you were on the core team, or some of you were both. And just kind of talk about, you know, what engaged you most, and what are some things that we should consider as we move forward, and some lessons learned along the way. And I'll just say, there were times where things got tense, and then there were times that there were, you know, lots of celebration. So it wasn't a perfect process. There were things that, you know, as a group, we wanted to make sure that we would work through as a group, but then also some things that we might want to consider as a district as we engage these types of things moving forward as well. So, Anna, you're standing. I'll ask you to go first.
And I went ahead and wrote a little something, so I'll kind of read it, because I do better when it's written down rather than just off the cuff. So, first, I just wanted to say thank you to the board and administration for selecting me to be a part of our strategic planning process. I've really enjoyed each step of the process and learned a lot through listening with community members and having conversations. When I first learned about the strategic plan, I knew that I wanted to be a part of it moving forward, and so I'm glad that I was able to do that. So where was I most engaged? I think my most engaging piece was being out into the community, doing those community engagement sessions. I went to 4 out of 6 of those, and just was blown away by participating in those and hearing different perspectives and thoughts of our community members around us. Also really dug deep into the core conversations that we had surrounding our priorities and mission statement. Just really, we had some tough conversations for sure. Some ones that were maybe uncomfortable at times, but I think overall, everybody listening collaboratively together, it was really engaging and really nice to be a part of. I also really appreciate the district's efforts to ensure opportunities for our community to engage and provide their personal experiences and desires for the future of our district. And as overall, I feel that the whole process allowed for a multitude of different perspectives to be shared and considered. But with any process, we know that there are places that we can improve. And the first area I felt improvement could be made was during our community engagement process, where I felt like there would maybe be a different way to really see top priorities and themes that were coming through with a ranking system. So making sure that if it was brought up multiple times by different people at the same table, or people were agreeing with certain statements, that those were kind of raised to these clearly are bigger themes that are really supported by our community. And then the other area, and I understand that's kind of where the dot sticker process came in, but I think that kind of ended up being a little bit more confusing than actually driving what our top priorities were. And then within that type of priorities, just kind of understanding from our community's perspective, what does academic excellence or proficiency look like? It looks different to everybody, and so kind of understanding the more deeper part of that. Let's see. Oh, and then I guess I would really have liked to see the student or the survey data that came out from our community. I would have liked to go over that and be able to look at that as a core team prior to presenting. But I understand time is a big issue, so I would have liked to have a lot more time, maybe a couple more meetings even to kind of go over all of it and to really nail down our community's desires. Let's see. I think that was the ones I had for that. And then what are my biggest takeaways? I'd say my biggest takeaways was that we have a community that's very passionate, engaged, and invested in our district. And they really want to ensure that our district is among the top performing districts in the state, as well as ensuring our district provides the highest quality opportunities in education for our students. And my last takeaway is a personal one, and that's that I really enjoyed and am passionate about engaging with our district and community, and I'm excited for future opportunities to collaborate and lend my voice to helping our district's future grow.
Thank you, Anna. Really appreciate you.
Thank you.
Bill?
Do all of you want to stand? Sitting for a long time.
It might hurt to stand.
Yes.
Just stand for 10 seconds.
Sure, I can stand.
My legs would be so numb if I was.
Thank you.
Thank you. I know. What do we do here? Thank you.
That's well done as almost like a substitute teacher would do.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
We're sitting already?
Yeah, I just got my student teacher's license a month ago. Used it 3 times.
Wonderful.
We'll see how the students think of it as we go forward.
They will love it.
That's awesome.
There were 3 items that I wanted to touch on, and the first one was, at what part of this process was I most engaged? And so I needed to look up engaged. So I went to the dictionary, and it says involved in an activity, greatly interested, committed. Well, I was greatly interested throughout the process. I felt very good about being selected, felt honored. It did take a couple of sessions for me to get totally immersed in understanding and synthesizing the qualitative data that came from the feedback. Why? Well, I am very used to a more quantitative strategic planning system. Strategic plans that support a safe working environment and how to make more money now and in the future. In other words, a strategic plan for a for-profit, publicly owned business. Nothing wrong with it, that's just what it is. So here I learned that this strategic planning process, and I think it's correctly designed for the qualitative data collection and analysis. It did get us to where we wanted to go. So I compliment all of you on the school board, Dr. Thomas, and the senior staff for putting together an outstanding process. Now let's talk about future considerations. What would I see doing differently? Consider making the strategic plan a living document. Review one core priority in detail each year with a task force that includes a higher percentage of teachers, along with students, senior staff, parents, and community members. Some questions that you could ask: is the school district actually making it a priority in the annual plan? Is the school district making measurable progress as expected? And if not, what should be changed? I believe this annual core priority review would help foster more engagement. And then last, what was my takeaway? I am really, really impressed with everyone who participated in the community feedback sessions and core team meetings. A few descriptive words come to my mind: intelligent, curious, different experiences, and most importantly, passionate about a good education for every student. So here's my takeaway from that. This community has many smart and talented members who are willing to help. Take advantage of this resource. Actively engage us. The Strategic Plan Core Team is just one example of what a community partnership can do. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Hello, I'm Lee Corby. I have been serving as a peer coach, but I'm trained as a high school science teacher. And I would say I felt really excited to be filling out an application at like 4 in the morning going, ooh, will you please put me on the strategic plan? Because I think having a vision for our district and trying to describe what we want education to look like for our students is really important. And so I was excited to be a part of it. I was most engaged in thinking about like who was at the table. I thought it was really cool to get to work with someone who had been a part of the process in 2014 and could offer like a rich context to why we say all learners and not all students. And that sort of history was informative, but I'm a teacher at heart, and getting to work alongside students and getting to see students care about the district and lend their voice to help guide, you know, at times crusty old adults in shaping what this plan can look like. I think that's where I get most engaged, knowing that students like Dan care about the process and want to be a part of it. That was really inspiring. When I think about improvements or other considerations, I sometimes wonder, do we have all the voices of our community members? I think that you know, I like to be curious and creative in thinking about how can we reach out to everyone and get them to come and participate in community forums. I think we were creative in offering different locations and times, and yet still, as a parent with young children, I'm like, yeah, but it's tricky to get away. And so are there creative ways that we could host smaller focus groups or do phone interviews or rent a bouncy house and provide babysitting and interview parents on the side while kids are playing? Some out of the box thinking to make sure that all of the parents and families that are a part of this community have a real fair shot at lending their voices and their perspectives. And then lastly, I would say my takeaway is, you know, I think a lot went into this plan. Is it the strategic plan of Lee Corby's dreams? No, it's not like the strategic plan I would write, but I think it's data driven. So many voices were a part of this, and people who did participate had to participate, right? We had to do a consensus vote on every measure and agree that we could all live with this. And so I think the fact that a lot of planning and the process and the data that went into it was so solid, I think it does really represent our community. I think it is collaborative in that, and we all kind of got a piece of what we were hoping to achieve, and then I think I can stand by it and say, yeah, I can see a good plan there. So, thanks.
Thank you.
And Dan, if you want to say a few words, he's one of our 4 students that were part of the process.
I remember when I was a student so long ago. I gotta say, what really drove me to join it was the idea of getting to leave something to help, Prior Lake High School after I leave. And when I first showed up from day one, it was just so awesome to see all these, staff and community members that were so eager and excited to do the same thing. And getting to work with that group was just such a pleasant experience. I'm really grateful for. I was most engaged, I think, when we would break into small groups to discuss either the mission statement or the priorities. And the conversations, we could have gone until midnight. And it always brought up different perspectives that I never would have thought about. And getting to be a part of that and really dig in was truly engaging. And I'm really grateful for everybody who brought great conversation points to that, because the plan would not have been the same without it. What's the next thing? I wish more student participation would have happened, and that's kind of on me and my peers, so my bad. But seeing more student and I think also teacher input from high school teachers would be interesting, just because, and that's a little biased, just because I work with so much of them, and I know they have so many ideas. That's just something I would have liked to see more of, but that's just how it happened. But I'm really grateful for the opportunity and reflect very fondly on it. So thank you.
More than welcome. Thank you. Thank you, team, and thank you all for agreeing to say a few words. And this is just a small sample of the many perspectives, and they're very different perspectives, and that was the beauty of this team. We often talk about asking questions, pushing back, and challenging one another, and this team lived it. So I really appreciate this team digging in, and as Anna stated, yeah, there were some heavy lifts sometimes, and you could just feel it in the room, but people didn't lean out. They actually leaned in, so that was pretty impressive to watch. So thank you, core team. And again, there was a lot of community input. The core team was just the one doing a lot of the behind-the-scenes synthesizing, et cetera. But as Lee stated, a variety of dates. We tried to accommodate, weekends, weeknights, afternoons, evenings, morning sessions. We tried a multitude of ways of doing it, and so you can see those on the schedule there. And then the next slide, you can see that we had a variety of different, participation. Again, we shared this with you previously, I know, but just for folks who might not have seen this, watching online, a really good mix of folks throughout the initial gathering. I think that was at Prior Lake Library, in that picture there. All right. And as Anna stated, at the very end, and I think Dan's right, yeah, there were a couple of nights that we could have gone all night. The flow was just that good, and we probably could have used the time. But we understand people have lives, and we weren't going to probably have a lot of folks that would stay till midnight. But at the very end, actually throughout different points of the engagement, one of the things that Dr. Zumbush was really mindful of in qualitative research, those of us who are steeped in that in our research backgrounds, we did a lot of analysis, and so we're very trained to do that. but every qualitative researcher needs to disclose their bias and their involvement and things of that nature. And so, you know, one good thing about artificial intelligence is that it can be a companion tool that we can utilize to help synthesize or get a process started. And so we did leverage that from time to time throughout this process. You know, if I had 100 different statements, I could plug them into, you know, different tools that we use and say, give me the top 5 themes from these 100 submissions. And it would generate. Now, I'd obviously have to read those 100 submissions to check for accuracy, because we did catch that our initial time together as a core team. And I think many of you could vouch for, like, wow, this is interesting how this goes up. And then some of us were doing it live in the moment. People were putting stuff into, you know, their different AI forms in their groups. And so that was a conversation that we had, and we leveraged some of that. So at the very end, to the point, and trying to keep this moving, we did open up the survey at large to our community for the plan that we landed on as a core team. And we had that open for about a week. And people were asked about what resonates, what concerns them, what might be missing. And there were 181, let me just back up a little bit. I also want to talk a little bit about the survey process. There has been some feedback this year and last year about our survey process. And there's questions as to whether, is it our stakeholders taking the survey? Are people taking it, one person taking it 10 times to stack the deck? And, you know, a lot of fair critique. And so this time around with the strategic plan survey, we thought, of this source document that's going to be a governing document, let's figure out a way to address some of that feedback and ensure that we can guarantee that we get folks from our community and we don't have one person taking it 10 times. So a requisite to complete the survey was that you entered in identifiable information. Not that we use it, but we just wanted to make sure that we can say, okay, this person says they have 3 kids at such and such a school. We can query their name and see, yep, they're in our system. Or we can look up, you know, an address and say, yep, that's within our district. Things of that measure. So we had 181 total respondents, 35 incomplete submissions, and our incompletes ranged from truly incomplete to noneofyourbusiness@gmail.com. Why are you asking me this? You know, 1, 2, 3, 4 address, just bizarre stuff. And I understand people might not want to provide that, but we actually included that in our overall analysis of where we could actually have some substance to include. But I just wanted the board to understand that that's what we got. And so lesson learned is, sometimes they're going to love you and sometimes they're going to hate you. No matter what kind of survey you do, you're going to get critiqued about it because the people didn't like the fact that they had to give identifiable information, but nonetheless. And we are in the process of redacting that information because we anticipate somebody wants to see the qualitative comments, and so we'll clean that up and make sure there's nothing identifiable to say, you know, Michael this or Michael that, and, you know, so we'll have to pull that out. But that will be made available to the board, and if anybody from the community requests it, we'll have it as well, just like we've done in the past. So that will be coming. But we did take those 181 submissions and we queried their findings with AI. And honestly, it didn't, like when we pulled those 35 out, it didn't skew the data set any which way, really. I mean, it's within the same themes, but these are the findings that came from the community at large. Student-centered, community engagement and support, empowerment and inspiration, accountability and transparency, resources and fiscal responsibility, how do we take care of our staff, inclusivity and diversity, and actionability. Those were the themes that came out from our query of running all of that through some AI sources. And I have to tell you, having been at every single one of these sessions, there's nothing that came out of that query that was different than what I've heard all throughout the process in a variety of different ways. Was it said exactly like this? No, but did it fit these themes? Yeah, a lot of what we discussed fit in these themes. So I just want to share that, with the board as well. Which that brings us to our draft of then what we heard from the community at large, based upon some of those themes, what could we incorporate? And so as members of the senior team came together to reflect on the total experience, what we heard at the survey at large. Again, that was a 1 week's time in turning it around and try to incorporate some of that. So what you are seeing here tonight, board, is a culmination of the initial draft that we had coming out of the core team. And where you see strike through or red, it's where we've made some changes. And let me just put on my cheaters here real quickly. All right, so starting at the vision, and I'll just give a little context of some of the edits. Community supported was something that was stated at our very last core planning team session right at the end of the evening. It's something that I put into the vision that night with the core team, saying that will be something that we'll bring forward into the draft. There wasn't a lot of response around that from the core team, nor did that come out strongly in the overall at-large survey as something tied back to that vision. And so for that reason, that was a strike through. But I just wanted to give context. That was a comment that was made by one or two individuals at the very end of a core team meeting, our last session together. But it wasn't something that we established consensus on. And so put it out there, but that's something that we would have as a strike through. Vision, as we shared with our core team, this is what we aspire to be. And this is like our tagline. This is our, if you're in a commercial, that's how you would close your commercial. That's what you want your consumer to remember about you. So student-centered, results driven. And results is I could unpack every single one of these words for another 4 hours, I'm sure, but results are a multitude of things to a multitude of different people, but results, at the end of the day, we need to deliver results. That's academic results, that's, IEP goals, that's a variety of things. So that's something that is on there. The mission, the why we exist. And what you see here is to inspire and empower each student to reach their full potential. We went back and forth on reach and seek. Again, not to belabor the conversation tonight, but just know that reach is something that we are moving forward for the board to consider. But there was some interesting context around that. Looking at the 4 priorities, academic excellence is something that surfaced, or academic achievement was a big conversation topic. And through the survey and through, conversations throughout this experience, excellence is, a real stretch. That's the tall reach. And so leading with academic excellence is something that we would recommend. Optimizing our resources, and I won't read what's inside the boxes, but just maximizing every resource that we have, whether it's a financial resource, people, curricular, et cetera. Ensuring that our schools are safe, warm, welcoming places for our kids, positive learning environments. And there was a big focus on staff, and so we wanted to make sure that we didn't miss that, and that came out in some of the feedback. As you just saw, the big themes from the at-large feedback about supporting staff. And so that our valued is in here as well, and staff is any staff member. And then lastly, community partners. And this is something that, as a district, we want to ensure that we are engaging and bringing our community in. And community is all-encompassing of a multitude of stakeholders, and there's an infinite amount that we could begin to list in that box. The core beliefs that you see at the very bottom, namely the changes were around the sequence and the order of which we saw that come up in feedback. accountability was probably the biggest core belief. Our community wants this district to be accountable. And there's no question and no getting around that. And so that is something that we would say should be the first thing that came up, because that was probably the biggest thing around multiple measures. Respect is also something that came up a lot in our community at large sessions and throughout, our core planning. And unity is a singular word that came out of a phrase that I would say was in almost every single community engagement session, and that was focus on what unites us. That was a recurring statement that many people would say. And I'm talking different people at different times. It wasn't like the same person saying that same thing every single time. It came up almost verbatim in many of our community engagement sessions. And we landed on the term unity with some qualifiers there. And then lastly is stewardship, which we've spoken a lot about tonight already on some other topics, but stewardship with our resources, and resources being a multitude of things. So what you see before you here, board, is our draft with the strike-throughs and the red to be incorporated into the draft, but we wanted the community to see that we are hearing and listening to your feedback. So you see the changes of where it was incorporated and where it may not have been. I think Lee said it well. There's not going to ever be a perfect strategic plan. If I change one word for this group is going to say, we like that word, change this other word. I mean, we could go back and forth. We'll never land on a perfect plan. But our process is one that I will defend wholeheartedly, that throughout this process, we've engaged multitude of stakeholders from various backgrounds and perspectives. And so it doesn't matter where you fall. I think our community was represented in a variety of ways and touched the development of this in some form or fashion. Our next step is to turn it over to the board for your input. And between now and next week, the senior team would synthesize your input and feedback into the document as necessary, and coming back to you next Monday, June 17th, for the board to take action on a final plan that we would present to you. And then lastly, our management teams, both the senior teams that you see here as well as our school principals, will then utilize this plan to now cascade accountability metrics for our department improvement plans and our school improvement plans, all tied back to the strategic plan. So everything funnels back up into the priorities. And this kind of gets back to what Bill was just talking about, is that, as an individual staff member in the district, my individual conversation with my supervisor, I might think only about what I have to do. But we want our staff to understand you work for the broader good of what we're trying to accomplish as a district. Like, you are a cog in that wheel, and really can generate that butterfly effect as you flap your wings seemingly by yourself, that you give the rise to every one of your colleagues and ultimately to all of our students to reach their dreams. So that will be a lot of our heavy lift next that we'll be bringing forward to the board at a separate time, more so when we discuss our academic plans moving forward. And that's where a lot of those, like our community wanted to get into the nitty gritty, but that's where administration will be developing those plans. And then that will be our report out mechanism on the strategic plan by way of those performance metrics plans for our schools and our departments. So again, just want to thank everyone who has been a part of this process. No matter how you touched it, survey, live, in person, core team, board reps, you've all done an amazing lift together, and it just speaks volumes for when a community from varied backgrounds can come together, just how much magic can actually happen when we work well together. So thank you all, and Chair, I turn it back to you for any discussion.
All right, so we've all had a chance to read this in our board book for over a week, so I'd like to just open it up to a brief discussion. Any comments, statements, anything?
I'll start with a comment. It was a privilege to be part of the process. I'll leave it at that. It was a real privilege. The one question that I have is, under the core beliefs, we use PLSAS in each statement. And I feel like in the core planning meetings, we did kind of discuss that at one time or another. Like, do we put those words in that are maybe, I don't know what the word is, but do we need to have PLSAS, in the spirit of less is more? Do we need to say that in each core belief? That is really my only question that I had.
In lieu of, like, to say we, like, make it more,
Right, I mean, we had
we are
a,
transparent, we take responsibility, we appreciate the value, we provide, like that kind of thing? Is that what you're saying?
Maybe it's like being transparent, what is accountability, what is the core belief? We had an evening in the core planning meetings that we spent some time at one time going over, do we say, maybe it was even in the priorities, like PLSAS, and we had, the group had decided that wasn't necessary, more in the spirit of, less words might be more. And so just, that was one of the questions that I had, because we're saying that in each of those core beliefs. Not that it's wrong, but I've said it many times, I don't need to say, I am a less is more person.
Director Bullen, I would say looking at other strategic plans, that's very consistent with other districts. They don't restate their district name in their core beliefs, so I would be in support of that as well. I'd say, do you have more?
That's all, yeah.
Okay. I also would just like to thank everyone. I thought it was a great process. I participated in all the 6 community meetings, as well as observed a core planning committee meeting, and it was really great to get to know so many new people in our district who have a passion for being a part of what they dream and believe to be the best school district in the Southwest Metro. One thing that is a clear call out for me is our vision statement. And like you said, Dr. Stamas, a vision statement is what your company or district is looking to achieve in the next 5 to 10 years. It's aspirational. It's something that should motivate every single stakeholder to be a part of a journey. I currently do not believe that our vision statement is more than what is expected to be done in a school district. I believe a strong vision statement would be something more like, and these are just a couple examples of other districts. West Tonka says, an innovative district delivering educational excellence. Minnetonka, or Jordan uses grow your Jordan pride. And then Minnetonka uses a world-class organization dedicated to child-centered excellence. I think that we could take what we're trying to communicate in here, student-centered, results-driven, which I believe is the basis of what we should be doing as a district, versus as being aspirational. And we could simply change it to a district committed to delivering student-focused educational excellence. And that, I believe, would be something that would be aspirational, as well as something that would inspire so many different stakeholders in our district. And that's, I have some more feedback, but I just wanted to stop and pause on that and see if there's any other feedback from board directors. I went back and watched the meeting I missed, and there wasn't a lot of conversation on the vision statement. So, and I understand there wasn't a lot of conversation at the core meeting on the vision statement as well. So I think that lends itself to a conversation here at the board table, because it is really important. It is what guides our district. And being in the business world, I know I've mentioned to you Scheels, and everybody's familiar with Scheels as a retailer, and their vision is to be the best retailer in the eyes of their stakeholders and their customers. And they nail that. Like if you go to Shields, you love Shields. And so that's really what I think we're looking for, is a vision statement that every single stakeholder in this district can be inspired by.
I know the feedback from the core team around vision centered around kind of the punchiness, the catch of it, and being something succinct and brief that you take away, you remember. And that was some general overall feedback that everybody was kind of striving for. Thus, you see something fairly, like even with community supported, there was feedback, that's too long, it's too many words. So, but again, that was a subsection of our community, but I hear the feedback from both of you. So yeah, appreciate that.
Anybody else?
Well, I have some additional feedback, and I apologize, I wasn't here last week. Please be patient with my feedback, and I appreciate that. The other thing that I've heard from our community, first of all, I appreciate you sharing the survey data with the board. That will be really helpful if we can have it before the June 17th meeting. And then the other thing is that when you guys started the process, I was really happy to hear the district's commitment to a plan that was developed by, that our whole community could support and be unified by. One of the biggest concerns I received in feedback from constituents is in regard to the word inclusive, which is under positive learning environment. Not only have I heard that it's repetitive for the word safe, but if you look at various meanings in the dictionary under the thesaurus, it's referred to as being political and liberal. So I believe that this one word would create division in our community, as it's not neutral. Our strategic planning meetings were launched with a Braver Angels workshop with the intention of improving conversations by not using red flag terminology, is exactly what was stated. I believe that inclusion is protected under Minnesota Human Rights Act and does not need to be stated in our strategic plan, as by stating it, it means that we're not following the Minnesota Human Rights Act. I also took a look at other districts, especially those surrounding us, where our families can easily drive and open enroll in a district such as Lakeville or Jordan, and they do not have any red flag language included in their strategic plan. Their plan is focused primarily on improving academic outcomes. So I would, just from what I'm hearing from the constituents, I would like to see either a different word used or that word removed. And then I have one last question. Looking at our original strategic plan and looking at our new strategic plan, I would like to understand as a board director, what is truly going to change with this new strategic plan? There was some language in our old plan that said we were going to expand innovation. We were going to integrate eSTEM. So are those things that will still be part of our district? eSTEM, expanding innovation, expanding advanced learning. They were in the old plan, and they're not specifically stated in this plan. So I know eSTEM, like Wolfridge and all those learnings, they're very important to families. So
Yeah,
I just want to understand that.
So again, going back to the first set of slides, what a strategic plan is not, it's not exhaustive of every little thing. And there's, again, a lot of things that aren't written in this plan that we do that we're not capturing. The work of educating kids is going to continue. So yeah, I mean, it's part of who we are as an identity of our district. Our focus on eSTEM, our focus on, meeting the kids' needs, whether you're somebody who needs special ed support or whether you're somebody who needs gifted support. We want to find ways to, meet the whole need of our learners. So again, it's not exhaustive. So I would say, yes, there's a lot that we will continue, and there's a lot that's not written into either one of those plans that we do.
Okay, I appreciate you clarifying that. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I appreciate the core team's work on this. This is, I mean, strategic plans are not easy. They're great, and they obviously guide, your work. But it's a big lift to draft a strategic plan. And I really appreciate everybody that came together to do that. I I chuckled because I really like the word seek, but I like reach too. And I think it serves its purpose, but I kind of dug the word seek in our mission because it kind of, you're always learning. Even after you graduate high school, sorry, Dan, always learning. I do appreciate the term inclusive. I think it's a must. Sorry, I'm losing my place here. Oh, I did have just a quick question. Actionability, I guess, was, I think, one of the AI terms that kind of got brought forward.
This is actually, no,
What
this
does
is just
that
a
mean?
term that, to take action, it's
Right.
something that's worthy of taking action.
Is it tied to
There-
something,
no,
or
no,
it's just very vague?
it's just,
me.
it's just a term that was
Yeah.
part of the conversation.
Okay. Just checking.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. It's a lot to do a strategic plan, and I appreciate everybody that came together to do it. So I'm sure there were a lot of great conversations, so that's wonderful.
And Director Exon Olsted, I appreciate your feedback, and I would just say that I think the word inclusive is costing us millions of dollars of our district. We're losing students to other districts. The other thing is that we don't have a strong commitment to engagement with parents and parents' rights in this plan. And so, I think if you want to stay away from that red flag terminology like we talked about, I think we really need to truly look at neutral language, because parents are looking at these strategic plans and making decisions. Is this a district that they're coming to? And like I said, Lakeville, Jordan, Minnetonka does not have any red flag terminology in their strategic plan.
I appreciate that, and I'd love to know where you got your definition of as inclusive. I'm looking at Merriam-Webster, and it doesn't have anything to do with being liberal.
Look at the thesaurus. Under the
so-
thesaurus, it says political, and it also says it matches to liberal. I have it right here. I'd be happy to pass it over to you if you'd like to see it.
Thesaurus?
Words
Okay,
that are
we're gonna-
similar. So, and it is about words,
which-
unless we want to define it, but there's a lot of different definitions for inclusive. And these are why we're having these conversations, because our district has been falling short and not meeting the needs of our homeowners and our students. And this is really important. I mean, it was very clear that we were coming together to unify our community. And so finding language that we can all agree on and come together with is really important.
Okay, well, we did, several tables did talk about using the term inclusive instead of unity, because they didn't want the term unity to mean everybody was the same. But the inclusive is including or covering all the services, facilities, or items normally expected or required. And the 49 synonyms and all that kind of stuff online do not include liberal. So,
I'll need to. I can pass it
and
down
I
to
don't
you.
know
I have it
where
right
you're
here.
getting your red flags, but listen, I just want to say that and I want to repeat what Lee Corby said up there. This is not my strategic plan. It is not any one person's. It's supposed to represent all the coming together of very diverse viewpoints and really, really interesting and exciting conversations. And I will say that just sitting in between the two groups and overhearing and that we're coming at this the final time, I just found it amazing the way the different people were coming to the exact same conversations at the exact same time. And it just showed how unifying, literally, not to pun here, it actually was, the conversation actually was, because the group that you were in was coming, they were, if you stood over there, they were having the exact same conversation at the exact same time on the exact same words as the other group. And that was actually an illuminating experience of how everything kind of comes together when you put diverse viewpoints together and they all kind of see, or what you could say, kind of point north. Now, not everyone agreed with every word, and I agree with Director Olsted that I was very excited about the term seek because it meant curiosity. It meant that, you know, they empowerment to actually go out and find and continue looking for. But if the survey came back and everything else came back and said reach, I'm fine with that because that means that everyone's kind of on the same page. And again, the whole concept of focusing on what unites us is the overriding theme here. So I'm actually really proud of the work that the group did. And like others, I was a little nervous going into it because I didn't know what was going to come out of it and how this is going to work out. And at the end, probably by about the third or fourth meeting, I mean, you really saw some really good engagement and people were passionate about it, but they were also incredibly respectful to each other. And there was a lot of laughing. There's a lot of humor that was good-natured and it was a great experience. So I came in also one of those being a little skeptical, and I left feeling much better about our community and about the people that engaged. Do you want to add anything, Dan, or? Okay, you look like you would. So our next steps are to continue to absorb this and vote
Yeah, there's
next.
some feedback points from the board tonight, and we'll bring it back to the team this week, and then have something to share with you all next week
Great,
as a final.
okay. Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda is the facility use fee approval, and that will require board action. So ahead of that, I'd like to ask for a motion in a second.
So made.
By Director Crosby,
Second.
by Director Bullion.
I was, sorry.
Need any questions? So no presentation, just any questions on the facility use? And again, we are increasing the fees.
Yeah, so we, every year we kind of go through and review facility use fees. And obviously, a lot of the keywords you guys are talking about tonight is inflation and raising, supply costs, everything's going up. Pools are one of our higher cost things to maintain. So we are looking at increasing the pool fees for this next school year. This, again, is going to be reviewed. We review every year, so after we see what happens with the levy, we could be reviewing a lot of other things with facility fees as well. But for now, we're looking at the pool specifically.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can you tell me like who uses the pool? Is it just community education or like how are the pools used?
The pools are heavily used. Obviously, we got high school sports, both our synchro and boys and girls swimming. We do have community ed uses it for a summer swim lessons program. And then we do have club swim that uses the pool quite a bit too. So those are our primary, and they're all community-based. Most of our facility rentals are actually people from the community, whether it's your PLAYs or Storm or things like that, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
If there's no other questions, I'll take a vote.
Thank you.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes 7-0. And then the next on the list is the resolutions and allocation report for the long-term facilities maintenance for the Southwest Metro. So I need a motion and a second for this
So made.
by Director Bullion.
Second.
second by Director Velazquez. And this is I think this is annual that we vote on. I'm sorry, not annual. Yeah, this is the Southwest Metro for our allocation of long-term facilities maintenance. I don't know if anything else needs to be said. Right, there's two resolutions. The first one is for the, like I just said, the first one is for the maintenance, facility maintenance, and the second one is for the share of the program the district's the first one is what I'm talking about, is facilities maintenance.
Just as a reminder, we are a member of Southwest Metro. As an intermediate district, they are not allowed to collect revenue directly from the state. So this resolution for the long-term facilities maintenance and also the safe school levy is just so that they can send in their levy requirements to MDE. Our portion will be, for the LTFM levy, will be $14,436.46, and the safe school portion will be $21,303.66.
Okay. Okay, does anybody have any questions? We have to vote on each resolution separately? Because they're, yeah, we do, because they're roll call votes. So Martha, it's separate? Okay, so if everyone's ready for a vote, if there's no questions, we can go with the first one, the approval of the resolution for LTFM. Roll call vote, we'll start with Director Olstad.
Aye.
Director Crosby.
Aye.
Director Burnick.
Aye.
Director Bullion.
Aye.
Director Velazquez.
Aye.
Director Atkinson.
Aye.
Okay, that passes 7-0. And the second one is for the safe schools share. I need a motion and a second specifically on that one.
So made.
Director Velazquez. And
Second.
second by Bullion. Any questions on this?
So this is for the inclusion of a proportionate share of this program in the district's application for safe school
Right.
revenue. Okay, thank you.
I just have a question. So can I ask how many students go to this school, Southwest Metro? Does anybody know?
There's a percentage share from us, but I don't have a number.
That's okay. I mean, it says in here that we are providing, sharing the cost of a school resource officer. I was just curious. I didn't realize they were big enough to have a school resource officer. So
Yeah, and I would say that,
as I shared with you, I'm not as familiar with this. I'd like to learn more about this program.
yeah, so, and Director Chuka's not here to give you a total number
Okay.
allotment of students, and the so I will say that the SRO is something that the superintendents were just talking about as well, and it's only at one of their campuses, and I think it's a partnership with Chanhassen Police, where they do that, and one of the things that I think is a fair question is if we don't utilize that service at that location, are we engaged in that? And that's one of the conversations that we're currently having, but they're there to service any of their campuses, so it could feasibly be at where we might have a student.
Oh,
but
okay, I understand.
right now, they're stationed primarily at one, cluster of sites where they have more need.
Okay, understood. Thank you for sharing that or explaining that.
Are you ready for a vote? Okay, this is a roll call vote. We'll start with Director Atkinson.
Aye.
Director Velazquez.
Aye.
Director Bullion.
Aye.
Director Burnick. Director Crosby.
Aye.
Director Olsted.
Aye.
And aye, that passes 7-0. Okay, the next item on the list is our own 10-year LTFM plan update that we do yearly also.
Interim Director.
And
Olson.
yes, interim director, Maureen Williams. I need because we are voting on this, I need a motion and a second first.
Are we voting?
Does it say we don't vote on it until July 8th?
Oh, July 8th, I'm sorry. I saw board action, but I didn't see the date. Thank you very much. Okay,
Right. Good
Director-
evening, Chair France,
Dr. Thomas, members of the board. There's 2 documents to ask you to review, and we're requesting your approval to submit these to MDE. They were in your board packet. One was the long-term facility maintenance 10-year expenditure application. That's the MDE form. That has the detail of both the Category 1 and the Category 5 spending. The second document is the detail report for the Category 5 spending, which is listed out for the 10 years in detail per year with our inflation factor. So happy to answer any questions you have about any of the projects or any of the, anything we have listed on those 2 forms.
Are there any questions?
Would any of this change with, anything going on this November? Would anything change? Like I'm looking at the detailed lists and things that need to be done. I didn't know if that would change at all.
I would say that if we had additional resources in our district that could help offset what we're doing with capital needs right now, I would certainly, and Maureen can speak to this too, but it could certainly adjust the timeline because we might delay projects that maybe perhaps we would have resources to be able to do at a different timeline. Maybe it could be done earlier. But it's prioritization right now of safety and based upon a variety of things. Is there anything you want to add?
There's, so this is our long-term facility maintenance plan, and there's certain types of projects we can do, but this is not all of everything that is LTFM eligible. So in order to meet the funding amounts that we are allotted every year by the state, there's only so much we can put on the plan every year, and so we have to prioritize those projects. So there's approximately $4.2 million in projects that we pulled off of this plan. As we added things on this year, we had some things come up that took priority that require that we do them to remain operational for continuity of operations. So again, it's conditions-based, and we have to make those decisions, which is why we update it every year because those change. Right. But yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? No. Okay, moving on to policy.
Thank you.
This is the second and final reading of these policies. We've already gone over these in a study session, and they've already been through the policy committee. So I'm going to ask for board members to let me know how you would like to do this. Do you want to do them all at once with the changes that are in here?
I have one question about policy 904, and so if we can answer my question or discuss that, then I'm open to approving them all at once. But maybe we could pull that one out for more discussion.
You want to vote first and then pull that one out, or discuss? Okay, why don't we just do 904 really quick?
Let me get to it. It's down here somewhere. I listened to the school board meeting that I wasn't able to attend, unfortunately, and the question I had about 904 is there was some discussion about how the employee name or changed. There was a definition of a non-school person included in this. But my question is that with this policy, and I went back and read several of the emails that we've received from community members, oftentimes, whether it be posters that people are questioning, where did these posters come from? If they're coming from an outside source, or stickers on doors, or teachers wearing apparel that maybe a parent is, I don't know, say like, doesn't think is appropriate, was all pointed to every single time that a parent emailed in, it was pointed to, this is the policy of why we allow this in this district. And so my question is, can you help me understand with the change of taking out the employee, which policy, well, first of all, how does this impact posters in our district? And then how also does it impact employee apparel? Because those have been the biggest, like I said, I pulled the emails and have been the biggest areas of concern where our district has pointed to this policy as this is why this is allowed in our district.
Director Herman, would you like to address this? Or
I just have a question, Director. Where are you talking for when they removed employee? Where on the policy? Can you direct me so I can see?
So I think if I'm looking at, I have the old policy in front of me, and there was some definitions added. So the definition of distribution was added, the definition of materials was added, the definition of non-school person means any person who's not currently enrolled as a student, any person who's not employed by the school district, or an employee acting outside of the scope of the designated role.
Right, we didn't have definitions in this one before, but we've been adding definitions in the policy committee to make sure definitions are clear.
Director Atkinson, members of the board, the intent on D, adding an employee acting outside of their scope as a designated role, is to clarify the difference between when an individual is acting as an employee under this policy versus when they're acting as a non-school person under this policy. In terms of the posters or apparel, a lot of it would depend on the context of that situation, on which policies would all apply to that situation. So I'd struggle to be able to respond to that with detail without knowing the individual situations at hand. But in terms of this policy, the intent of the non-school person adding an employee acting outside of their scope of their designated role was to delineate when an individual is wearing their employee hat versus when they're wearing their non-school employee hat.
So which policy do we have in place that would, because employees are employees of the district, right? And so is there any policy that would, I don't want to give specifics, to be really honest with you. We've had a long night, but there's been T-shirts that teachers have worn that are offensive to some people, and where would that fall under which policy?
So I'd have to look at all the policies to answer that question, but specifically speaking to the policy that's being discussed tonight, this 904 is specifically centered on distribution of materials, not dress code, not.
That's why I always question.
Distribution of materials by
Yeah, like
entities outside the school district, probably to prevent marketing
Yeah.
and solicitation.
Students sign up for this,
yeah.
or go to this club when it's not a district-sanctioned event. That's what this policy is
And
pertaining
not
to.
part of an employee group or a student council group or whatever.
Right, which is why we can't go back in the past, but I always
Director
question
Atkinson,
where it
can
came to
I?
904.
I'm sorry,
Yep.
can I jump in quickly? I just want to make sure this is clear. This policy still applies to non-school persons and employees as related in the title. It's just defining that there are employees that still act in our district when they're not wearing their employee hat. So when referring to an individual as a non-school person, that could include an employee who is acting outside of their role as an employee. So it's just trying to delineate between the two of them, not to exclude employees from this content being applied to them, but to memorialize the fact that we do have employees who are also parents, we do have employees who are also community members, all of the above. So again, as listed in the title of the policy, it's still applicable to non-school persons and employees. We're just trying to better clarify how an employee could potentially fit in that non-school person definition.
Right, and so if a poster shows up, that's not a district-produced poster, then
doesn't
that
pertain
applies to this policy.
No, if the poster was an advertisement for joining a club from community organization X that wasn't approved, through community ed, that's what this policy pertains to. The other information you're speaking to doesn't pertain to this policy, and I can't speak to which policy that would be aligned to. That's not the topic for tonight, but this policy here is distribution of materials. So if that poster were promoting an event, whether it was the community organization or if I, as a staff member who is part of that community organization, was trying to distribute flyers, that's what this policy pertains to. The other concerns that you're bringing up have nothing to do with 904.
So if a teacher is also sells Avon on the side, distributing material to do that, if if an employee or staff member is also a member of the Rotary and the Music Fest, the Music Fest thing is not associated with the school and distributing those posters or something like that, that sort of thing.
Like I said in the past, I found it very interesting that 904 was pointed to as why this stuff was allowed. But I think the biggest question that pops into my mind, which I see as being, where this policy comes into place, is if we do have a levy on the ballot and we have teachers handing out flyers saying, take this home, whatever.
Can't do that. So that's
Well,
this, that's
And
what
that's
this
why this is
speaks-
here. Or
that's
if there's a tech yes or a tech, I just apologize, I did not mean to say that Director Olstad. If there is a vote yes or vote no campaign,
Yeah.
they
Can't-
cannot have flyers or posters
on their own time and on their own,
the school
on their
district.
own, yeah, they cannot, they
Okay,
cannot.
because that's, I think it's gotten muddy in
Make
the
sure we're
past.
clear on that, sorry to interrupt. It's not a hard they can or they cannot. Again, it all depends on what hat they're wearing and that they're making sure that they're following our procedures and protocols. So if individuals want to rent our space, or they want to provide materials at events, or they want to do different things, we have these processes that are reviewed based off of the audience, the materials that are being presented and who's presenting them. We would have to go through that whole process, and that's why we want to be very clear with our employees and our community members on what the do's and don'ts are around that. But there, again, I'm not trying to not be non-responsive, it all depends on context and what is all going into the situation and which policies will or will not be applicable. But again, this policy would be a part of that conversation, but, on what would or would not be allowed.
Okay. I think I'm clear, thank you.
Are we
Chair
ready?
Franz?
Yes?
I just want to make sure to call out the only two other policies that had changes to them is, as we discussed at the last meeting, Policy 413, the gender identity that's by statute was missed in the edits that I sent to Martha for that board packet, so I do apologize. That has been added for this one. And then on Policy 521, there was a spelling error on calendar that's been fixed. All other policies were as presented at the last board meeting.
We did have one change at the last study session to remove a reference to 425. Was that taken out? I didn't see it in
Yes,
here.
I
did
apologize.
search.
That was another one as well.
Okay. Okay. And I did get all those changes, so I saw them. Did it, everyone else good? Okay. Are we ready for a vote? Did I do a motion yet? Nope. I did not. Okay, so I need a motion and a second
So made.
by Director Velazquez
Second.
and a second by Director Olstad. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that passes 7-0. Okay, I'm moving on to administrative reports.
Thank you, Chair Franz, Board Directors. I'll be brief. Just want to let the board know that we've, for the past several years, quite frankly, our secondary campuses primarily have been engaged in conversations about personal technology usage, namely smartphones, smartwatches, earpods, and how that has become a distraction to the learning communities. And, as was said earlier, a little blessing and a curse that during a period of time, we needed to leverage that, and now we are, doing some other things that we're going to have to address around maybe some of the dependency upon technology. But nonetheless, 2 years ago, there was a concentrated effort at our middle school campuses to begin changing their cell phone protocols in the school. And then last year, earlier this fall, through a partnership with Live More Screen Less, we enhanced that work that they had launched a year or so ago on their own, really gave a lot of good research around the usage of cell phones and the distractibility of cell phones, et cetera. And we've been having conversations with the middle school campus and their staff, and there's a strong desire, and they've had this for a couple of years now, to go cell phone free, bell to bell. And this is something that we are looking to advance forward with our K-8 campuses. Not really an elementary issue, but we're going to make this a K-8 conversation to start. From bell to bell, that personal technology, namely cell phones, but we'll work through the nuance of this, will not be allowed during the instructional day. We understand that students coming into school, after school, coordinating pickups, activities, that is something that would be allowed. We also know that there are students who utilize technology for medical purposes or for other reasons that on a one-to-one individualized basis, which would be a small percentage of our students, may need the assistance of that. And so that would be something that we'll work through. But generally speaking, the premise is we want our students to be focused on academics during the school day, and if any technology is used for instruction, that's why we have the curriculum-based iPads, but the texting, the gaming, all the other stuff that students will be distracted by, even if it's during lunch, that is something that our middle school, for example, almost all the staff took a survey, and there's 92% support at the middle school level to pull cell phones out. And so that is something that our team will be working on this summer with regards to policy 525.1, which essentially allows for, I think if I had that policy number correct, that's student personal use of technology. So that is something that we will be working to rewrite this summer so that we can have something in place, in effect, when the school year starts with students. We would also have to look at internal school-based levels of management of this protocol. So what does a first, second, third offense kind of situation look like? What does the storage of cell phones if they do bring them? All of the nuances of that. That is something that we'll be putting into place over the summer. So just wanted to share that with the board and to our community, that this is work that we'll be bringing to you. Obviously, you have the authority to change the policy, but know that we'll be bringing this to you for your review and seeking action to support the administrative decision to not allow cell phones K-8 bell to bell. So that was the report that I wanted to share with the board, and more to come on this one.
Are there any administrative reports? Okay, and board reports? Anybody? Okay.
Just a lot of
You're off the hook.
celebrations. That's the only thing that
You're
I-
off the hook. Yeah.
I just wanted to, my only thing to say is just in the last couple weeks, all of the celebrations from MinCaps to Strive at Bridges, the year-end banquets, the district celebration, and then, of course, commencement. Those are, it's just it's a privilege to be part of all of them, and it's such a highlight.
Okay, thank you for that. Future events, we have a study session next week on June 17th at 6 p.m. And then also, we do recognize the Juneteenth federal holiday on June 19th, and all buildings will be closed that day. So I need a motion and a second to adjourn.
So made.
Okay, second. Dr. Director Velazquez, and we are going to adjourn and go into a closed session for the discussion of the superintendent evaluation. Thank you.
All in favor, aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes 7-0. Is it? Has it? Yes, got